The newest edition of Final Destination is here, and it definitely takes you on a familiar ride with death. We'll be talking about the movie's plot in the review and how it connects with previous installments. Spoilers are ahead. The premise of Final Destination Bloodlines starts with Iris and her boyfriend heading to a restaurant dance club in the sky, kind of like the Sky Needle in Vegas. This is set in around the 1950s timeline. Everyone's in very iconic looking outfits. There's a lot of foreshadowing right off the bat, too. Johnny Cash's Ring of Fire plays on a radio, as well as Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head. Iris has a premonition that the dance floor is going to break and the whole entire building is going to explode. All because one kid on the roof throws a penny. That penny ends up falling through some vents in the perfect spot, jamming into a fan, and the fan ends up exploding, causing a gas leak, which then ends up blowing up the entire building, killing every single person there. So after seeing her death, Iris stops the kid from throwing the penny and tells everyone to clear the dance floor immediately, and she ends up saving everyone that night. But Death doesn't like to be cheated. Over what seems about 50 years or so, Death starts hunting down every single person who should have died that day, and all their descendants who technically were never supposed to be born. Now we meet Stephanie, played by Caitlin Santaguana, who's having constant nightmares about the event her grandmother Iris almost lived through. Her uncle warns her not to go looking for that lunatic who was obsessed with death and the outcomes, whatnot. Turns out Stephanie's mother, Darlene, who also had visions just like Iris after Stephanie and her brother were born, ended up leaving the family due to Iris's delusions spreading to Darlene. Once Stephanie gets to the compound where Iris lives, there are wind chimes everywhere symbolizing that death comes with the wind. Iris explains that in her premonition, it was going to be real and death would be coming for every single person who lived that day. Stephanie doesn't really believe her, and then Iris goes out of her way to prove that death is coming by stepping outside when she feels the presence of death looming. And then Iris ends up dying in front of her granddaughter Stephanie in a horrific hole through the face. We then cut to the funeral where Stephanie, her brother, her three cousins, her Uncle Howard, her aunt, and her father are there, and then Darlene, her mother, ends up rolling through in her Winnebago. Now, the family isn't necessarily super thrilled to see her, as they haven't seen her for about at least 10 to 15 years at this point, but they welcome her to the family barbecue to mourn Iris. This is when Uncle Howard meets a very brutal death via lawnmower. At this point, Stephanie tries to warn everybody about the order of deaths that she learned from Iris's secret book that she ended up giving to Stephanie right before she died. They all brush her off, and then cousin Eric, who is presumably the oldest of Uncle Howard's kids, almost dies in a fire. This then leads to everyone questioning that this order that Stephanie seems to have predicted isn't actually true. Unfortunately for Julia, who actually is the oldest of the three cousins, ends up dying exactly how Julia predicts, in a garbage truck. This then leads the family to having a sit down, freaking out that now 3 people are died, and this seems to work, this algorithm that Stephanie has created. But there's a dilemma. Why hasn't Eric died yet? That Eric was never Howard's son. This is a bombshell moment that ends up affecting the entire cast from this point on. So, given the events, that means that the youngest of the cousins, Bobby, is next in line. He's very panicked and very scared of what's about to happen, so the team now, Darlene, Stephanie, her youngest brother, Charlie, and cousins, Eric and Bobby, all have to find a way to escape death and help Bobby from dying. Using Stephanie's book, they end up seeking out a man named JB, who's played by Tony Todd. Now, Tony Todd is a connection to the other movies in this. He's not playing Bloodworth, which is another character callback to the previous movies, but he's playing just a character that was in Iris's flashback. JB gives them the advice that death is going to come and it's going to be messy if you try to interfere with it, but the only way to get out of it is to die and then get revived. That's the only way to stop the timeline. Eric, wanting to save his youngest brother Bobby, and then goes to find some peanut butter, which Bobby is severely allergic to. The idea being, if we can have him go into anaphylactic shock, we can revive him. As they leave this room, they go into a random room inside this hospital that JB ended up staying in. Ends up being an MRI room. Inside this MRI room, things are already starting to go awry when things are falling down and the MRI gets turned on by mistake, but the characters are unaware of this at the time. Now, they give peanut butter to Bobby, and Bobby starts to have anaphylactic shock, and Eric has his needle that will save him, but they want to make sure he dies so they can revive him immediately afterward. Unfortunately, Eric is covered in piercings, so the moment that he's gonna get ready to revive Bobby, he gets thrown into the MRI, destroying his body, and then he ends up crunching into the machine. Bobby ends up getting the pen and hitting himself, able to revive himself for the moment, not from death, but from anaphylactic shock, until unfortunately a spring from the vending machine they got the peanut butter from flies out, going right through Bobby's head, killing him. Now there's 3 left: Darlene, Stephanie, and Charlie, the youngest brother. They head to Iris's house, which at the time seems like the only safe place they could imagine. This was a massive mistake, as death was waiting for them the whole time. The RV flips into a lake, which then also sparks a fire on top of the building. As Darlene and Charlie try to get inside as quick as possible, the entire house explodes, sending Darlene flying across the room. Darlene meets her fate there and dies. Stephanie, still trapped inside the RV, now underwater due to the explosion, is drowning, while Charlie tries to get her out of the van. We see the light leave Stephanie's eyes as everything fades to black, until cut to Charlie performing CPR and reviving, breaking the curse on Stephanie and Charlie. They stumble out of there, as hurt and destroyed as they are, and make it home. About a few weeks pass, to then Stephanie is dropping Charlie off at his prom. They're talking to Charlie's date's father, who I believe is a doctor or something, and they bring up the fact that Charlie revived Stephanie from death. The doctor shrugs off and says, yeah, he sort of did, as the doctor tells them, well, she never was technically dead, she was just unconscious. She needed her heart to stop, but otherwise, great job, Charlie, you did it. Good for you, buddy. This realization immediately hits Charlie and Stephanie. Now suddenly being very hyper aware of everything that's going on around them, we notice a train in the distance. Now, the original penny that was from Iris's near-death experience in the beginning of the movie, she had in her secret book, and somewhere along the way, this penny falls out. Now, somebody picks up this penny, an old woman we had very lightly met throughout the movie, and she goes to pay at a lemonade stand with a bunch of change, drops that penny, and that penny we see rolls on away and ends up flying into the train's tracks, stopping the connector bar from connecting, leading to a massive train derailment in this suburban town. Our heroes, Stephanie and Charlie, hear this explosion happen, and then a train comes flying toward them as they run down the street trying to get away as fast as possible. They outrun as much as they can to the train, thinking they're safe, but another bang comes when the rest of the train finally hits, and a bunch of logs fly out into the air. These logs come flying and immediately impale Stephanie, crushing her completely, as a second one and hits Charlie, completely disintegrating the both of them, ending the movie and ending the curse by killing every single last person that should have been dead. The moment you find out that cousin Eric, the oldest presumed cousin, actually isn't related to the family is a really good twist in this movie. I think this is actually my favorite part of the movie, was this talking scene, which is kind of funny that the talking scene is more entertaining than a lot of the deaths for the most part, but I think the emotional baggage and the fact that everyone was finally getting on the same page, and the fact the characters now are narrowed down to only a select few people, really brought out a lot of the relationships they were having. I really enjoyed the emotional beats that started to happen once they realized they weren't actually super related, but still loved each other as brothers and protected each other as brothers. Now, I really like the acting from Bobby here. I think he does a really good job of conveying his fear in this moment of being next and being in not wanting anything to happen, and it was really well done, I think, by this small group of people, albeit a little bit predictable and kind of makes the pace suffer a little bit because you're waiting for the inevitable death of Bobby and the rest of the cast, truly. Final Destination Bloodlines is a decent addition to the series, but not one of the stronger ones. It's got some good acting and classic over-the-top death scenes, but the writing is weak and the story feels loosely held together at best. I'd give it a 2.5 out of 5. It's probably more worth your time on streaming than it is in theaters. I think this is something that will do better in streaming, just given the fact that it's easy to throw on and it doesn't need to be paid attention to besides the moments of death. The suspense and the articulation of the way they do the bottle falling off, causing the gas to go off, causing a light explosion, which then gets glass on the floor. I mean, it's fun, and it almost feels like the movie's based around those scenes and then built the rest around those scenes. So take that for what you will. 2.5 out of 5, I think, is a safe bet. Thanks so much for watching. That's going to do it for Final Destination Bloodlines review. If you like videos like this without the camera, more talking, let me know in the comments below. I really appreciate you stopping by. And hey, let me know what you think of Final Destination Bloodlines or even any of the other movies. Let me know what you think about Tony Todd in this movie. Is he the anchor of all this universe? Is he death himself? Let me know what you think about it and your interpretation of all that. But until next time, have a great rest of your day.